When a high school student reads a published article, they tend to give the author the benefit of the doubt. If the prose is confident and polished, the reader automatically assumes the underlying evidence supports it. Getting a student to hold beautiful writing at arm's length is one of the hardest challenges in the English classroom. It requires them to pause, step back, and interrogate a text objectively, immune to aesthetic charm. That is exactly why we built the Galley. It is a 14-day individual simulation where the student leaves behind the role of a passive reader and becomes the editor of record for a prestigious literary magazine. Sitting on their desk is a 2,500-word first draft by a writer named Sasha Petrov. It's a propulsive, highly readable exposé targeting a beloved local bookstore. The writing is undeniably brilliant, but the editor-in-chief gives the student a strict mandate and a 14-day deadline. Their job is to read the manuscript and separate what the writer sounds like from what the raw documentary file actually establishes. By forcing students to investigate the documentary record themselves, the simulation shifts the focus from how a text feels to what it can actually prove. Literacy becomes a process of active verification rather than passive consumption. On day 1, students learn a new, methodical rhythm. They have to evaluate the manuscript on 3 simultaneous layers: the craft, the structure, and the fact. Navigating these layers introduces students to cognitive biases discovery first. They encounter their own psychological reading traps right on the page, experiencing the friction of the process before they ever hear the formal academic vocabulary. By day 3, they hit the halo effect. Sasha's beautiful, authoritative prose effectively disguises incredibly thin reporting. When you remove the glow of the writer's craft, the factual skeleton underneath is highly unstable. Students also discover the danger of locking in their confidence too early. They firmly anchor their belief in the manuscript's claims on the first read, long before the actual supporting documents arrive on their desk. They learn through direct experience that beautiful writing is frequently the greatest obstacle to factual clarity. To do the job, the student has to learn to actively distrust their immediate emotional reaction to a good sentence. The pressure spikes on day 6. This is the fact-check return, the moment the raw reporting notes hit the desk and contradict the manuscript. The raw evidence file is messy. It contains 4 letters from former bookstore employees, and their accounts are completely at odds with the narrative the writer constructed. To manage this chaos, students use this evidence tier tracker. It is a vertical ladder that forces them to formally rank the reliability of every new piece of conflicting information. They have to contrast the value of a weak, hedged statement from a single source against the undeniable weight of multi-source convergence at the top of the ladder. They also must wrestle with negativity bias. When reviewing the file, a small cluster of loud, alarming fact-check warnings will easily overshadow a much larger volume of quiet confirmations. Rigorous editorial judgment always requires a system. It is about systematically weighing conflicting realities under severe time pressure, keeping the facts organized when the narrative gets loud. On day 9, the student must commit to a specific editorial frame in writing. This choice is binding, as it dictates every subsequent edit and defense they will make. They face 3 distinct choices. They can inherit the writer's original frame, they can mark it for heavy revision, or reject the framing entirely based on the evidence file. This leads directly into the Day 10 Quote Yourself audit. Here in this split-screen layout, you can see how the mechanism forces students to pull an exact sentence they wrote a week earlier and evaluate it against the new reality of the file. This exact audit forces the student to confront hindsight bias. As the new facts pile up, they feel the overwhelming temptation to secretly alter their previous logic so it matches the current evidence. True intellectual rigor means auditing your own previous conclusions just as aggressively as you audit the writer's manuscript. The Day 14 climax rests on a definitive, irrevocable publication decision. The student signs off on the final version of the story, accepting full responsibility for what goes to press. The final deliverable is a 600 to 800-word Galley letter. The student writes directly to the author, defending all of their editorial cuts and explicitly stating the frame the magazine will publish under. For the ELA teacher running this in their classroom, the execution is entirely mapped out. You do not need to possess professional magazine experience to teach this. The simulation's daily files, built-in rubrics, and pacing cards do the heavy lifting of guiding the daily mechanics. Because the format relies on strict individual accountability, every student must own their final publication decision. No one can hide a lack of comprehension behind a group work dynamic. Educators can facilitate an incredibly complex, high-stakes critical thinking exercise without sacrificing their own prep time or classroom management. On day 11, students apply these same editorial filters to the real world. Students take the exact framing and auditing techniques they just learned and map them directly onto a real, recently published op-ed. Visit patiencelearning.com to explore the materials and bring the Galley into your 10th grade ELA classroom to teach uncompromising reading skills. Separating craft, structure, and fact allows students to evaluate any text by its evidence rather than its polish. It is a habit of mind that changes how they engage with every document they encounter.